Our final episode of the Jackrabbit Sports Hour here is underway inside the Yeager Media Studio. Final one here of the 2024-2025 school year. Brent, Bowen, and Austin Senger are your co-hosts. We look forward to one last show here this week. We'll start the week of news with, or I should say the bi-weekly of news with some SDSU stuff. Jackrabbit volleyball this upcoming Saturday to play the Nebraska Cornhuskers over in Ord, Nebraska. Every year, the Huskers play a game somewhere else in the state of Nebraska, besides Lincoln, Nebraska, so that all their fans that can't watch them play a game in the fall can catch a game in the spring in whatever town it may be located in. The Jacks were selected by the Huskers to play in Ord this upcoming spring. It is what is just a pretty cool tradition.
Yeah, it's an exciting thing to do for the Jacks to play against the Huskers. And I'm excited to go personally. I get to travel with the team to Ord. I'm excited for the environment and see how packed that place will actually be.
It's always a pretty festive time of year for Nebraska fans, and got an opportunity to play in Lincoln last year. Didn't get to meet with the Huskers because lost to Miami in round number 1, but was still cool to be a part of playing in that venue, and look forward to getting the show on the road here in a few days. It's actually a roster that's pretty well put together and well intact from last year's. Didn't lose too many pieces. Got some help by a couple players being able to return for a 5th year, and overall the roster is looking solid heading into next season. Yeah,
I'm excited to see the same success as last year.
28 wins for the program last year, and we'll see if that can continue into the 2025 campaign. Schedule should be released for the program here in the next few weeks, although it's pretty much already finalized. Just have to put together a few more small details as usual to make sure that all the puzzles are fit into the piece. So that's volleyball. Season opener will be in about late August, Labor Day weekend. SDSU baseball won 3 out of 4 over North Dakota State last weekend. Really, probably the best and most complete series the team has played all season. They've had a couple of good series at home. One against Omaha, now one against North Dakota State. Big series this weekend for baseball against Northern Colorado. If they take care of business and win that series against the Bears, they'll probably be in the Summit League tournament coming up in a few weeks. And speaking of conference tournaments, the Summit League softball tournament is next week, and SDSU softball will more than likely be the number 2 seed, barring a collapse at North Dakota this coming weekend. Fighting Hawks and Jacks will play 3 games. If SDSU wins 1 game, they'll be the 2 seed. If they get 1 game or more, they'll be the 2 seed. Omaha's already clinched the 1 seed in the conference tournament. But if North Dakota picks up the sweep, then the Jacks will be the number 3. The tournament will be up at Gerald T. Moriarty Field in Brookings starting next Wednesday and concluding next Saturday as the Jacks look to return to the Women's College World Series. So that's SDSU sports. The NFL draft, some may say, was last week, and it was an incredible turnout outside Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And so usually there's those few surprise picks in the NFL draft in the first round. There weren't too many surprises this year, at least through the top 10 to 15, maybe late in the first round. There were a couple of surprising picks, but there was no Michael Penix Jr. to the Falcons type pick in this year's draft after there was last year's. But I mean, really, after we sit through, I guess we're through day 3 now, but who are some of your bigger winners and losers of this draft?
You know, I think the Giants did pretty well in this draft. You know, they picked up Abdul Carter, who was a great edge rusher, and then they traded back into the first round to pick Jackson Dart. You know, that's their quarterback that they're going to try to make their franchise quarterback. And then they picked up Cam
Skadabo from Arizona State,
who is a beast at a running back. So hopefully this Giants team will look a lot better this year than they were last year.
The Jackson Dart pick is definitely something that a lot of people questioned and are not fans of. I mean, you got a lot of people, you either love it or you hate it. And at this point, the Giants have had quarterback problems since Eli Manning. Had 1 good season of Daniel Jones, and that's about it. But they've had quarterback problems for some time now. And I would guess the only prospect they loved in this year's draft was Cam Ward, who obviously went to number 1. There was rumors out there that were true, I believe, that the Giants were aggressively trying to trade up with the Titans to get the number 1 pick. So They probably really wanted Cam Ward to be the future of their franchise, but they couldn't get him. But they get Abdul Carter, who's a great prospect himself. It'll make that Giants defensive line one of the best in the league, actually. They've got a couple good edge rushers, a couple good defensive tackles as well. So their D-line is looking good. Their defense could be improved next season with Abdul Carter. A lot of people are reminded of Micah Parsons when they watch Abdul Carter play defense. And then Dart's, you gave up a lot to trade up to get Jackson Dart, but if he's worth it and if he ends up panning out to be a good quarterback in the NFL, then I think that would be a good price to pay if you're the Giants. One of my teams that I questioned what they were doing was the Atlanta Falcons. At least in the first round, they picked up a couple of good players. Jalen Walker, the linebacker to Georgia, was a good pick. And then even James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee, the edge rusher, is a pretty good prospect. But it's just the amount that they traded up to get him. I believe they gave up their first-round pick for next year to trade up to number 26 in the first round. And, I mean, once again, you can't really grade these draft picks quite yet. You got to wait and see what these players do after you trade for them or trade them away or whatnot. But, I mean, I just have a hard time. James Pierce Jr. is such a raw prospect. He could be really good. He could also be really bad. Very, very low floor, high ceiling type guy. So just the price that they gave up, we'll see if it's worth it or not. Another trade was the Jaguars and Browns. Early in round one, the Jaguars bumping up to 2. The Browns going down to 5. Originally, it seemed like a good deal for Cleveland, because it's really a good deal for both teams, actually. If you're Jacksonville, yes, you gave up a lot, but you get Travis Hunter, who might be the best player in this class when it's all said or done, can play at both sides. Then if you're the Browns, you got a lot back, and you trade down to 5 and still get Mason Graham, a quality prospect there at that 5th overall selection. The problem is, I don't know if the deal's worth it for the Browns anymore, because they stunk it up the rest of the draft and really just made a lot of confusing decisions for the rest of the draft that I don't know if this will end up working out for Cleveland, but they will still have Jacksonville's first next year, which, knowing the Jaguars, it'll still probably be a top 15 pick. So I thought the Raiders did a decent job. I think they've got an underrated team heading into next year. Pete Carroll's at the helm, Geno Smith. Now you'll have Ashton Genty, who could be one of the best running backs in the NFL right off the rip. Brock Bowers was a tremendous tight end for them last season. And he was an all-pro guy last year, and I expect him to continue to make leaps into year 2. So they've got a solid offense. They need to work on that offensive line, but they've built a good foundation so far right away. Anything else you got for round 1 of the NFL draft, or I guess just the NFL draft in general?
Like you said with the Browns, I was very confused about what the Browns were doing, like you said, towards the end of the draft. They first pick up Dylan Gabriel. Then in the 5th round, they picked up Shedeur Sanders. So they picked up 2 quarterbacks, and they already have 3 on there.
3 including Watson. So here's the deal with Cleveland. Watson is out for all of next year, and he was not good for them anyways, so they probably should just move off him anyways. But they have Watson on IR. They have Kenny Pickett. They signed Joe Flacco. And they have now Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. So they're going to have basically a 4-man competition to be the starter, where there's like almost a realistic path where you could see any of these 4 guys getting the starting job. I would expect them to go probably with Flacco week 1.
Yeah.
And then you'll just see from there. Obviously, there's still a whole offseason to get through, but I mean, I think there's a legit chance that Shedeur Sanders could win that job on day 1. And I think sometime in this season, there's no way. He has to get a shot from Cleveland just because of what they have in that quarterback room.
Yeah, I don't know if any one of the Joe Flacco had a great season with the Browns when he won Comeback Player of the Year, but I think they're going to want to move to a direction where they're going to want a younger quarterback to become their franchise quarterback. Joe Flacco's not going to be there forever, so I think they'd probably give Gabriel or Shedeur a chance to prove themselves and try to get that starting role.
Because Shedeur was a first-round talent. A lot of people had him mocked inside the top 5. And right after the end of the college football season, yeah, he was mocked in like the top 5, 10 from most people. But he didn't participate in the combine, just already has a super high ego, not a great attitude. He bombed meetings
Yep.
just with that ego of his. So that forced a major slide, one of the biggest slides we've ever seen in the NFL draft. From nobody had this guy going outside of the first round, and he drops all the way to round 5. That was wild to see how far he dropped. But the other thing that dropping so far does is you lose out on all that money. Being paid a first-round NFL contract is a heck of a lot more than a round 5 or even a round 6, round 7 UDFA if you drop all the way that far. But it's the Sanders family, so money's not an issue for them. I mean, Shador's collected how much money throughout his college career from NIL now, which has just gone nuclear ever since Shador Sanders started his days at Jackson State, and then obviously got paid a lot over at Colorado. So just NIL, really interesting times of college sports right now. So obviously the Shador falling to the 5th was probably the biggest headline of the NFL draft. If we're scrolling through the top 10, Cam Ward of the Titans, that's a good pick. Travis Hunter's a great pick for the Jags at 2. Carter's a good prospect at 3. I like the Patriots drafting Will Campbell. I think he'll be a good tackle for them and will be the franchise left tackle for Drake May, which the Patriots really needed in those Brady days. They were so good up front. Looking to rebuild that O-line here under May. Graham at 5, good prospect, defensive tackle out of Michigan. I think the Browns won that trade for the moment, but then they kind of bombed the rest of the draft, so we'll see how that pans out in the future. Genty at 6, that's a good selection. Tet McMillan at 8 for the Panthers. There was a lot of debate, should the Panthers go defense because their defense was so horrendous last year, or should they get Bryce Young, a legit number 1 weapon? They decided to go the second option and get Tet McMillan at Arizona, who was a top 5 prospect in this draft. Another thing I thought was interesting, the Bears at 10 going Loveland over Warren. Are you surprised by that pick, or do you think they should have gone different?
Yeah, I am very surprised because they have Cole Kmet. It's not like he's not a bad tight end.
Yeah, he's average at best.
I think they should have went for a different position at that pick. You could get.
Oh, really?
You could have gotten another tight end at a later round.
Personally, I would have gone tight end in the first round. I think that's a hole in their offense, and mostly because you think about it, what tight ends did in Ben Johnson's offense in Detroit.
That is true.
And there was multiple tight ends that got used, so Cole Kmet will still get used. Colston Loveland will still get used. They'll use 2 tight ends in their offense probably quite frequently. No doubt Ben Johnson wanted a guy, and I mean, wanted a playmaker in round 1 of his first NFL draft as the head coach. But I mean, this team's kind of set up front. Maybe not set might not be the right word, but they spent a lot on the offensive line in free agency. So they probably felt they probably didn't feel the need to draft one in round 1. I mean, they brought in Joe Thuney from Kansas City. That was one of many signings that the Bears had up front. They brought in Drew Dolan, I believe, to be their starting center next year. So they didn't really need offensive line help, and their defense has been solid enough the last year and a half that they figured they better fix up the offense and give their franchise quarterback Caleb Williams as good of a situation as possible here heading into year 2. Tyler Warren of the Falcons at 14 is a great pick. I think the Colts have needed a tight end for so long. They've never signed one in free agency. They've never just fell in the right spot to select one in the draft. But finally this year, a beast of a tight end falls right into their lap at 14. Warren could have been a top 10 pick. Instead he goes at 14. That's a great pick for Indianapolis. One of the more picks I was confused by was Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State going to Tampa Bay, and he'll enter their season as the wide receiver 4 behind Evans, Godwin, and then McMillan, the rookie out of Washington from last year. That just really seems like a confusing pick. Feels like they could have gone many other directions to complete and fill out the roster, but instead they take another wide receiver when they already have one of the best cores in the NFL.
Yeah, unless they're thinking about like the long term with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin getting up in that age. So maybe they want to find their guy to become that next number 1 or number 2. But right now I think they should have went a different direction.
And I mean, Godwin is going to be coming off a major injury. He's getting up there in age, so how will he return to his old self? Probably not. Will he return even close to his old self? We'll see. Mike Evans is getting old. Obviously, he's gotten however many 1,000-yard seasons in a row. But he's getting up there in age. He's, I think, going to be 33 heading into next season. So he's getting old. And then McMillan, the rookie, and now the rookie from last year, and now Ibuka, the rookie coming in this year. So that could be their Evans and Godwin of the future. And as you mentioned, just try and work them in a little bit. I was not a fan of the Chargers picking a running back at number 22. I think Hampton out of North Carolina is a fine running back. It's a prospect, but I think that should have been the least of the Chargers' concerns. And they should have just brought back like J.K. Dobbins in free agency, because he was solid for them last year. And I think they ran the ball effectively enough that if they just brought back that group, they would have been fine. But, I mean, a couple of years ago, there were a lot of people that didn't like the Lions picking Jahmyr Gibbs at 12, and look how that turned out. Now he's one of the best running backs in the NFL. So, in the end, us fans are not running NFL franchises, so we're not scouting these players. One thing we want to talk about before we move on to the next subject here was the Vikings at 24 picking an offensive guard, Donovan Jackson, to complete their offensive line heading into the next season.
Yeah, the Vikings rebuilt this offensive line from last year, and
no doubt.
I am glad they went with Donovan Jackson, who is a great prospect, and hopefully that line will give that time for McCarthy to throw the ball, make the right plays, and even get the run game going more now.
It's tough to say because you haven't watched them perform yet, but hypothetically, the Vikings have a top 5 offensive line in the NFL going into next season. You're great at the tackles. Darrisaw might be the best left tackle in the league. O'Neal's probably a top 10 right tackle. And now you've completely revamped the inside of your offensive line, which was terrible last year, cost you in the playoff game. You sign Will Fries at right guard to a 5-year deal. You sign Ryan Kelly to be your center, and it's good because those two have played together for however many years in Indy. And then you bring in Donovan Jackson, the rookie, to play left guard. So now if you can bring back guys like Brandel and Reisner, those would be solid backups in case some guys go down. Jackson, who the Vikings took at 24, is going to play left guard starting next season, but the guy played a lot of left tackle at Ohio State throughout his career, and especially last year, so he's versatile. You can move him around the offensive line in case if there were to be any injuries. So like if a Darrisaw would happen to go down again, you would hope not for the second year in a row. Jackson could slide to left tackle. You could slide in Brandel, who's not that bad, to be your left guard. So there's plenty of combinations the Vikings can still run. I liked their pick in round 3 with Tay Felton, the senior out of Maryland. Think he's a solid day to get, and Vikings could be in search for a wide receiver 3 soon. Especially when right now Naylor's in that spot, but when Naylor's contract is up, Vikings probably won't be able to afford to bring him back. So they'll have guys like Felton. They signed Rondale Moore a couple weeks ago. You can have these guys kind of run the show at wide receiver 3. But I mean, you're so talented in the wide receiver room with Jettas and Addison that I mean, you'd think it's got to be able to work for these guys.
Yeah, what Kevin O'Connell has done for this team with quarterbacks and with wide receivers now, the receivers are getting the ball, and I think Ty Felton is a very good pick for a day 2 guy.
I was thinking maybe the Vikings would trade down at a 24 because they didn't have very many selections in this draft. They only had 4 coming in. They were able to trade down once and then pick 5 times in the draft. So I think the big one that the Vikings need to have pan out is Donovan Jackson. Obviously, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah has been a little hit or miss in his time as the general manager. His first draft was awful. Like nobody from that draft is even on the team anymore. There were like I think Josh Metellus was picked in Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah's first draft, and I think that was the only good player, and that might have even been Kwesi's last draft, for all I know. I don't remember the years. Get them mixed up a little bit. But
he's been getting better, though. A lot better.
He picked Jordan Addison. That was a good pick at 23. He's been exactly what Minnesota's needed. I know he might have a suspension coming in. I hope not. We'll see, because he had that incident, that speeding incident last year. Last thing we're going to touch on here at NFL. On day 2, there was a prank call that went viral on social media. Ended up being the Falcons' defensive coordinator's son. Got a hold of Shedeur Sanders' number, decided to call him early in round 2 and say that he was going to get drafted by the Saints, pretending to be the New Orleans Saints general manager. Jeff Ulbrich, the DC for Atlanta, got fined 1/8 of his salary for next year, $100K in fines. Personally, I'd make my kid pay for at least half that. Gets fined $100,000, gets paid $800,000 a year. How about that? And how about that prank call and what went down there with Shedeur Sanders on Friday?
Yeah, it was kind of a crazy thing going on because Shedeur, his brother was live streaming the whole thing. So then the thing just goes viral, and then you see the other perspective from in the dorm or whatever.
And then you later find out that he has ties to the NFL.
Yeah, so I think it was kind of crazy and definitely a breach of information for these draft prospects. So I think the NFL probably did the right thing because they can't have breach of information leak out into the internet or anything. So.
And I mean, with the hefty fines, it's like, you got to put an end to this.
Yeah.
You got to teach these guys a lesson so that to almost in a way scare people to not try and do that again. But I mean, there's I think every year there's prank calls in the NFL draft, but it's just like now it's really like it's with Shedeur Sanders. So Shedeur Sanders getting prank called is always going to get more attention and more clicks on the social media just because of all the fame that Shedeur Sanders and his family has behind him. When if you're just prank calling, I don't know, some random, I shouldn't say random because they're all great athletes, but say you're prank calling a linebacker that's going to get picked on day 3. Nothing's probably going to happen to you. Or if something does happen to you, it's going to be much lighter fines. But since it's Shedeur Sanders, it's just it's going to get more attention, and we saw just that happen with that prank call. And Shedeur Sanders there's always something going on with Shedeur Sanders, and he's going to get a lot of coverage in his rookie year in the NFL, that's for sure. The most coverage that probably any fifth-round draft pick has gotten. Obviously, plenty of quarterbacks have gotten selected low in the draft, and it turned out to be successful. We'll see if Sanders is that next guy after he got picked in the 5th by the Cleveland Browns. So the NFL draft is over. The season will start here in a few months, and we'll hit the most dead part of the offseason here coming up in about 1 month's time. NBA playoffs, several round 1 series are already in the books. Each 1 seed swept their way to the second round. And then what was thought to be one of the best series in the first round was the Lakers and the Timberwolves. And that ended up being Minnesota winning that series in 5 games. And really, from game 1, tip-off of game 1 to end of game 5, really just looked like the completely more dominant team than the Lakers in this first-round series.
Yeah, from the very beginning, you could tell the Timberwolves were the way better team. They have the depth, they have the height also, which led into yesterday's game with Rudy Gobert absolutely dominating on the boards. But the Timberwolves just felt like they wanted it more, kind of. LeBron and Luka played an amazing series. They were crazy, but the other players on the Lakers did not do much.
I think Austin Reeves was the most disappointing player of this series.
Yeah, I have to agree because
there was never one game where he had a hot stretch to help the Lakers go on a big run. I'll pull up his numbers here, but in the regular season, he looked like one of the best number 3 options in the NBA. And then in this series, he really just struggled. In game 5, 12 points, 5 rebounds, shot 20% from the 3-point line. In games 1 and 2, 16 in each game, but hit no threes in game 2, but the Lakers still did win that game. Hit no threes in game 4, missed that shot at the buzzer. Really thought that, actually I take that back, he did make a couple threes in game 4. Shot it at 42% in that game, but either way, with the Lakers' lack of depth, they really just they needed their big 3 to carry them along the way. And LeBron and Luka, like, they were good, but not that good. and then Reeves was not even good. So, and then Jackson Hayes was bad, so bad to the point where he didn't even play in Game 5. And then Rui was fine, Dorian Finney-Smith was fine, but then they didn't really give guys like Connect or Vincent much of a fair shot at the bench because Redick was just so stuck up on we gotta go with these best 5, and these 5 are either going to win or lose us the game.
Yeah, it was very interesting coaching decisions by JJ Redick this series that we saw. You know, Game 5, which was yesterday, they would always double team Ant, and I would get Rudy or somebody open. It's
basically like you double team Ant, and then it turns into a 3-on-2.
Yeah, and then you don't have any height. You had Rui Hachimura on Gobert, but with that height, Rudy had 24 rebounds against this Lakers team. And in my opinion, if I was a coach, I would have put it in height with Jackson Hayes just for that height difference. But then at the end of the game, they put in Maxi Kleber, who hasn't played a game in a while.
Yeah. Because here's the deal. Hayes got his opportunities throughout the series, but Hayes was getting crushed on the glass and on the offensive end more than, or just as much as anybody on that Lakers team. And Alex Len's terrible. You're not going to play Alex Len. So you only have 2 centers on this roster, Len and Hayes, and they're both bad. So, I mean, there's not much around it. So in past games and series, teams have been able to pick Rudy Gobert out by playing 5 wide on the defensive end so much. And even the Lakers had success doing it in this series. Rudy wasn't closing most of these games. It was Naz Reid. But Rudy was so good in Game 5 that he ended up closing. I mean, 27 and 24 is just absurd. And obviously the Lakers didn't play anybody taller than 6'8", 6'9", so that shouldn't be that many people surprised that he got so many rebounds. Maybe surprised that it's 24, I guess.
Yeah.
If you'd have had like a 17 and 14 effort, I don't think anybody would have been surprised, but 27 and 24 is definitely going to raise some eyebrows. And I mean, this Minnesota team's dangerous, man. They look like an NBA Finals contender right now. I like their odd. I said it before the playoffs started. Whoever won that Timberwolves-Lakers series, I'd liked to get to the conference finals. That series gave me second-round energy. And I like the T-Wolves against either Golden State or Houston. I think either matchup would be tough because Golden State has Steph and Jimmy, and their role players have been playing pretty well. And then Houston, if it ends up being them, yes, they're young, but they now have a playoff series under their belt. So I think playing them in round 2 will be much tougher than in round 1. And then if you do get past the second round, you're probably going to run into OKC, who already swept Memphis in round 1. But going back to that Lakers-Minnesota series, I thought it'd go 6 or 7 games. Obviously, had the Lakers winning it, had the Lakers going a couple rounds further. But I was shocked that series ended in 5 games, and the Lakers are already done, and surely that's not the last we see of LeBron, right?
No, there's no way. I feel like once LeBron says he's done, there's going to be like an actual farewell tour for him. So I think he'll be back at least next year or maybe the next 2-3 years.
I would assume that LeBron is going to announce before a season starts when he's going to retire, that this would be his last year, because just think of all the media coverage that would get. And LeBron seems to be a guy that's not going to shy away from something like that, and just the opportunity for one of the greatest players of all time to go on one last farewell tour, visit each NBA arena one last time, and teams give him gifts and whatnot. Will it be next year? Who knows? But the Lakers do have a lot of changes to make this upcoming offseason if they want to be a true contender heading into next year.
They need a center. They need a center badly on this team. I wonder how different this series would have been if they had Mark Williams
from Charlotte. Yeah, I don't know.
So I think that's what the Lakers need to do to try to make a push next year, try to get LeBron another ring. But they need their starters to play in the playoffs. Like you said, Reeves hasn't done much. I mean, Rui had 23 yesterday, which is really good. But
if it were me, I would let Austin Reeves go.
Yeah.
Because he's going to get paid a lot of money. And from what he showed in the playoffs this season, he's not worth that money for the Lakers. If another team wants to spend that on him, then they can go ahead. But the Lakers should not spend that money on Austin Reeves. Instead, they should focus on retaining some of their role players, like most notably Rui Hachimura. And then they should use that money to help bring in a center. And that's what they should do. You got to surround, because Luka is such a traffic cone on defense that you need to have such a solid defensive alignment around Luka all the way around. Luka's your one liability. You need to have 4 rock-solid defenders next to him. We saw that with Dallas last year. That's why they made it to the finals. I guess him and Kyrie. Kyrie's maybe not known as the best defender. He's certainly a better at defending than Luka. But other than Luka and Kyrie, they had 3 really great defenders, including some great, did the Mavericks, and then including some great rim protection as well. And the Lakers just didn't have any of that this year. And they were great on the perimeter with Luka, LeBron, and Reeves, but I think this series showed that it's a team that wins you basketball games. And the Wolves 1 through 8 is so complete. They're up there with OKC as the most complete 1 through 8 lineup in the NBA. And I mean, they even have guys like Jalen Clark, Terrence Shannon Jr., who don't even play, that I think could make contributions on this team. So, yeah, it's just a rock-solid team, and they made it to the conference finals last year. Ant Edwards already is a top 10 player in the league. I think he's establishing himself as a borderline top 5 player in this league here this season. And that's the thing. He played terrible yesterday. He shot 0 of 11 from the three-point line, 5 of 19 from the field. The Wolves as a team were like 7 for 47, and they still found a way to win the game.
Yeah, it's crazy to see that statistic of them going 7 for 47 in 3 points, and then they only shot 40% from the field. So that's kind of crazy to see this Wolves team just shoot so badly, but still end up winning this game.
And obviously they had many moments, like in Game 1, when they shot very well from 3 in the second quarter, and in the second and third quarters got ahead by like 30. You see what they're capable of, and they're able to make 3-point shots. And I don't even think it was that good of defense from the Lakers. I think the Wolves just missed a lot of open looks, and they still won the game.
Yeah.
So I think even if the Lakers would have won that game, that series would have been done in 6 games, because surely the Wolves were not going to miss so many open threes.
No.
In another game. So they'll move on to the second round. They'll play either Houston or Golden State, which has been a fun series so far. Golden State leads it 3-2, heading back to the Bay for game number 6. That will take place on Friday night as the Rockets look to force a game 7. Another series that got done in 5, the Pacers with an improbable comeback. Had like a 2% chance to win the game with 40 seconds left. They rally from down by 7 to win by 1. They scored 8 points in the final 30 to 35 seconds to come back and win the game, thanks to a couple of Gary Trent Jr. turnovers. And there's a lot of rumors that Giannis is going to be out the door. Certainly has not been showing the best of body language towards the conclusion of this season. Obviously, tough break for the Bucks, losing Damian Lillard after just getting him back from injury. So now if you look at Milwaukee, Lillard, after tearing his Achilles in the playoffs, is going to miss all of next year just about. So, I mean, this might be it for the Bucks. Is that the last time we see Giannis play in a Milwaukee uniform?
See, I could totally see it. I think because the Bucks have not done well with building around Giannis these past couple of years. Of course, they won that championship, but the years after, they just haven't built a sustainable team for Giannis, and I think he might want out of the Bucks organization and go somewhere else.
Well, because that championship team was really good. You had Drew Holiday, who has since left, and now he's in Boston. You had Chris Middleton, who just got old, and they traded him for Kyle Kuzma just to get younger. And then Brook Lopez starting to get old too. He was more in his prime a few years ago. That whole team's just getting old. It's a dark future for Milwaukee. That whole team's getting old. Lopez is about done. Now Lillard's going to be coming back as a 36-year-old from an Achilles tear probably in 2026. And then Giannis is probably going to see this and say, I mean, there's not really much here.
Yeah.
And the Bucks don't really own very many picks. So I think what Milwaukee needs to do is you need to trade Giannis. You're going to get a haul for him. He's still in his prime. you're probably going to get 4 first-round picks. You should get a couple of great young assets as well to help you guys for your rebuild. And then, but I think it's going to be a complete teardown of the roster. It's going to be tough to trade Lillard.
Yeah.
I would say you probably keep Lillard around, see if you can get something from him post-injury, and if you can have one good year post-injury, then maybe trade him too. But you maybe try and build around Lillard a little bit and have him be a part of your rebuild. But yeah, the Bucks have won 1 playoff series since winning that title. Mm-hmm. They won 1 series in 2022, and then got bounced in the second round and 7 by Boston. Then they've lost in the first round each of the last 3 years, first to the Heat, and now back-to-back years for the Pacers. Thought the Bucks had a chance to win this series, especially with Damian Lillard coming back. And I mean, they should have won Game 5. That's a given. They should have won Game 5 to at least push it back to 6. But I mean, Indiana just continues to have a balanced attack. And what's weird about Indiana is a lot of the times, some of these guys that are going off for them is thinking, okay, they can't keep this up. But they just keep knocking down shot after shot, guys like Nembhard and Mathurin. And they just continue to make the right plays. And they're back in the second round. They'll face Cleveland in the Eastern Conference semifinals. Talk about the 1-8 matchups real quick. The Thunder, a sweep over Memphis. And games 3 and 4 were close. Ja got hurt in game 3. The Grizzlies blew a 30-point lead. And then Cleveland having their way with Miami in the East 1-8.
Yeah, the one Cavs game, the fourth, was it the fourth game? Because
the fourth game, it was like 70-25.
Yeah,
first half.
The Cavs absolutely destroyed the Heat, and it just it kind of showed I feel like I personally think the Cavs are going to make it to the finals, and I think that kind of game kind of showed how dominant this team can get. But of course, it is against the Heat, who's not one of the better teams in the league. But I feel like the Cavs have something there that can take them to the finals.
Yeah, the Cavs looked really good in round 1. Donovan Mitchell didn't even have to do it all at times, and their 1 through 5 is just so solid. Mm-hmm. Ty Jerome has emerged out of nowhere to be one of the best six men in the league, and it's just a really solid roster right now. And Kenny Atkinson, in his first year as head coach, has done a heck of a job. He should be the NBA Coach of the Year this season. The Pacers will be a tougher series than people think. Mm-hmm. From what they did in round 1 against Milwaukee. They have playoff experience now going to the conference finals last year. But I think really we're on a collision course for a Boston-Cleveland Eastern Conference finals. I think those are pretty clearly the top 2 teams. I mean, the Knicks there as the 3rd seed, I don't even know if they're going to get past Detroit. Game 6 will be in Detroit Thursday night. This is being recorded Thursday morning. Will get released Friday morning, afternoon, sometime on Friday. So on Thursday night, we won't know what happens yet between the Pistons, Knicks, and the Nuggets, Clippers, as the Nuggets and Knicks each look to wrap up a series on the road. I think the Knicks will still win that series. If they don't win Game 6, they'll come back and win Game 7. But either way, I don't think any team beats Boston, as the Celtics beat the Magic in 5 in round number 1. I think really the last series we need to talk about here is Clippers-Nuggets, which has gone back and forth. 3 of the 5 games have been barn burners, great games. Mm-hmm. If you're a Nuggets fan, 4 of the great 5 have been great games, because Game 5 was an absolute masterclass from Jamal Murray. He dropped 43 points. Russ had 21 up the bench. After Game 3, I mean, the team split a couple of close games in Denver. The Clippers probably should have won Game 1, but the Nuggets won. The Nuggets probably should have won Game 2, but the Clippers found a way to win. Game 3, the Clippers won by 35, and you're like, this series could be over in 5 or 6. It didn't look very well for Denver. Then all of a sudden, the Nuggets storm out to a 22-point lead in the 4th quarter of Game 4, but then the Clippers come all the way back to eventually take a 1-point lead. But the Nuggets win on an incredible tip-in from Aaron Gordon at the horn, and literally could not have come closer.
Literally couldn't. They were looking at that dunk forever when I was watching that. It was just an insane heads-up play from Aaron Gordon to just go after the ball no matter what. And I think that buzzer beater kind of gave them some momentum in the series, because they just came out the next game and just dominated the Clippers. So I think that buzzer beater might help them win the series.
I mean, yeah, if the Clippers had all the momentum in that game, so if Aaron Gordon doesn't put that in at the buzzer, it would not have looked very good for Denver going in overtime, and they would have been staring down a 3-1 series deficit, which obviously they've come back from 3-1 against the Clippers before, just a few years ago, but you never want to put yourself in that position. And now you're up 3-2 going back to LA. And I mean, this series is far from over. Last year in Denver's series against Minnesota, everyone thought it was wraps for the Nuggets when it was 2-0 Minnesota. Then all of a sudden, Denver comes storming back, wins the next 2 in Minnesota, wins Game 5 in Denver, and then the narrative flipped, and this is wraps for Minnesota. They're not winning 2 straight against the champs. They won Game 6 by 50, and they came back from a 20-point deficit in Game 7. So really, this series is long from over. It's 1-4, and I mean, Kawhi and Harden are 2 of the best players in the last 10, 15 years here in the NBA, and you wouldn't think those guys are going to go down without a fight. We finally get a healthy Kawhi in the postseason. You wouldn't think the Clippers would want to waste it and go down without showing a little bit of fight back. Game 6 Thursday night, potentially Game 7 would be on Saturday, and the winner goes on to face OKC. And really, I don't know if I like either team's chance against OKC the way that the Thunder have been playing so far.
Yeah, honestly, unless the one team that I could see doing something could be the Clippers. You know, they have a better starting lineup, in my opinion. But, of course, the Nuggets have Jokic, so that can always help a team because nobody on the Thunder is going to be able to guard Jokic. So it's just going to be interesting to see who plays the Thunder and what actually happens in that series.
Well, here's the deal. Right now, Denver is the better starting 5. They have one of the best starting 5s in the league. So the Clippers having a better starting 5 than Denver, that's not right. Denver has the problem with Denver's starting 5 right now is they're all banged up. Michael Porter Jr. is playing on one arm. Aaron Gordon's been playing with a bad calf ever since like March. Even Jokic is banged up a little bit. Murray and Jokic both seem to be healthy. Murray was hurt for a lot of the last month, but he came back for the last couple games of the regular season and has looked good so far throughout the postseason. They're going to need Murray to be that dynamic number 2 option. I mean, we saw what he's capable of in Game 5. I mean, for the record, I called the Jamal Murray game before the game started, but obviously that's the cameras weren't on me. But it just felt like it was going to happen. Jamal Murray in every single postseason is going to make his stamp with a couple of legacy games. Last year, he had a couple great games against Minnesota, and then he had those 2 buzzer beaters for the win against the Lakers. In the bubble, he had several tremendous performances. He leads the Nuggets all time now with 40-point games in the postseason, more than Jokic, more than Alex English, more than Melo, more than all these Nuggets legends. And all that, he's never been All-NBA, he's never been an All-Star, just the definition of a playoff riser. Jamal Murray has been that for Denver throughout his career. But if we're trying to compare who matches up better with the Thunder, the problem with the Nuggets, they're injured, they're not very deep, they could get gassed. But I think they're more talented, and if you see the peak Nuggets, they could go out there and compete. But I think the Clippers, they're a little deeper. The problem they need guys like Powell, Bogdanovich, Dunn to step up. Dunn and Bogey had great games in Game 5, but Powell did not. Harden also had a stinker in Game 5. Zubac has been solid for them. In my opinion, should have been the most improved player. He's been great this series. The problem, Zoo wasn't great on the glass in Game 5. That really hurt the Clippers. But for the most part, it's been very good. Kawhi had that one superhuman game where he went for 39 and 19 shots in Game 2. But other than that, has been fine in this series, not necessarily great. And then, who am I missing here? Just talked about Harden a moment ago. He had a terrible Game 5. They're going to need him to step up in Game 6 and a potential Game 7. Derrick Jones Jr. off the bench has just been kind of eh. But like they've got more guys than Denver, because the problem with Denver is they really only have like 6 playable guys. I mean, they were giving Peyton Watson, DeAndre Jordan, Jalen Pickett every once in a while a little run, but they have a good starting 5. Russ is a good 6th man, but past that, it's not very good. And we saw last year Denver run out of gas against Minnesota in round 2. I'd have a feeling it'd be a similar story in a round 2 series with Oklahoma City. But Still a fun postseason nevertheless. Before we wrap up here, we can kind of redo our finals prediction. Because who'd you pick out of the West? Golden State, they're still alive, I guess. Obviously, I picked the Lakers, they're done. In the East, we both picked Cleveland. After seeing almost a round of basketball, what do you think a potential finals matchup would look like?
I can see, or what I hope now, is just the way the Timberwolves have been playing and how solid they are, like they were last year. I want to say it's going to be Timberwolves versus the Cavs.
I'm going OKC in Cleveland. I think OKC's looked pretty strong. I mean, they had game 1 Avalanche, game 2 Avalanche to help them pull away in those games. Although that series against Memphis would have been a little closer if Ja didn't get hurt. Grizzlies would won game 3. They only lost game 4 without Ja by 2. It would have been interesting to see how that series panned out if Ja didn't get hurt. But this Thunder team's going to be really tough to beat at home.
Yeah.
And they're going to have home court throughout the Western Conference playoffs. In the NBA Finals, trying to think of who had a better record I think the Cavs had the better record than the Thunder. Nope, I lied. The Thunder had the better record. So the Thunder will have home court advantage throughout the NBA playoffs. And that's a big deal because they have one of the best home crowds of the postseason in the league. And it's going to be really tough for any team to go there and win a playoff game here this season. This postseason. It reminds me a lot of Denver's home court advantage from a couple of years ago. Denver, when they won the championship, only lost 1 game at home. I think OKC could do similar things here this season, but I think a fun rest of the NBA playoffs I think the rest of the NBA postseason, it's going to be a fun rest of the journey.
Yeah, I've been fairly enjoying this playoffs this year. A lot of really good games. Lots of fights too. I've seen a lot of scruffles.
There has been a few, yeah.
So I think it'll just keep going. I think the games are just going to get closer and closer. So I think these playoffs are going to be really good.
That's a wrap for our final episode of the Jackrabbit Sports Hour of the 2024-2025 school year. It's been a fun ride.
Yeah, it has. Very enjoyable.
Thank you all for tuning in throughout the school year, and have a great summer. And as always, go big, go blue, and go Jacks.